I'd like to add a little bit to the co-chair. I sat in that position for 6 years under different economic times where we had robust surpluses and put away billions of dollars. Obviously, the last several years, those economic times have changed. We have moved forward together through a substantial drop in oil prices. We've seen the reduction in oil production that was inevitable and forecasted, and we've worked together through several budget cycles before the one sitting here tonight. The last several years that we worked together, there seems to be a little more fractured than it is now. There seemed to be some colleagues that didn't think we had a problem, thought it would be just a one-year blip. We could ignore it, it'll go away, what have you. Or they counted money that didn't exist and counted it all kinds of strange ways I didn't understand that made the problem go away. We all knew it was here, and the clock ticked on, Mr. President. And this year, and it started a little bit last year, there's a pretty much a united realization that we've got an issue, we've got to deal with it, and the only thing left is the permanent fund that we have to fall back on, and we're going to have to use it. And we also have seen, especially this year, the realization that if we don't put in a structured system, preferably, in my opinion, protected by a constitutional amendment, but a structured system, we're going to face what the previous speaker had mentioned, ad hoc draws of the permanent fund. We will lose the earnings reserve. We will be in a position where we cannot meet the desire to pay a dividend, regardless of what statute is written about paying a dividend. If you don't have the money, you don't have the money. Because the Constitution requires that we have a budget and we have services that we have to produce, all kinds of agencies. We're not going to close prisons. We're not going to shut down the fishing game. God forbid we're not going to close the Marine Highway. We're going to meet these obligations. So we have moved a long ways. I think things are looking pretty positive, Mr. President, in getting a solution. I think it'll be in the next couple of years. We'll have, I'm sure, come together on a structured draw to protect the permanent fund. I think the public will see that this year. As referenced earlier by the co-chair of finance, we are in a position that none of us is going to like here in the next several days, that we have another $600 million that beyond a structured draw that we don't have the funds for, other than the constitutional budget reserve. To the public at home, that needs a 3/4 vote. If we don't get that, we're in a position to have an unstructured draw into the permanent fund, and we will do it because we have to meet our obligations. So as we work through this balance, we have to have come up with a budget that is acceptable to both bodies. Last year we had a lot of effort, and the year before in this body, to reduce costs, a lot of which didn't materialize, but we tried. This year we took a different approach. We didn't go out to aggressively push down the expenditure side, tried a little bit, because we knew it was not going to be deliverable. So we tried to come together with the other body and the minority as much as possible so the focus can be on how to protect that permanent fund, how do we stabilize our agencies, how do we get some predictability so we could take care of the funding needs for education, if it's early funding or standard funding, but we can fund it. The permanent fund knows we're not going to do ad hoc draws, so they don't have to restructure the style of their management that has worked for decades. They have cautioned us on that, ad hoc draw and the impacts that they're going to have on their asset allocation, and we are listening. So as we work together to try to come up with how we're going to move budgets forward, tonight, it's almost night, late in the day, we have an operating budget before us. It's not a shipwreck on the beach. It's not a derelict vessel, high and dry, piece of garbage that should go into the shredder. It is not that. I'm not saying the other one wasn't either earlier. But this is a good balance. It's a turning point. You see the people that want reductions and spending increase come together on a stabilized budget. We're seeing our colleagues from both bodies and across both aisles come together to protect the permanent fund. You can see the fiscal course of the state changing this year. But we do it in little incremental steps, unfortunately, instead of faster, because there's 60 of us that have to work together, and we have to bring everybody along, at least the vast majority of us, along with the public. And it takes some time to keep good information to the public and bring them with us. So this budget isn't everything for everybody. Certainly, I'd like to see more funding in the Marine Highway. I would like to see more troopers on the street. I'd like to see more village public safety officers in my village. I'd like to see more funding for schools and bus services and all kinds of things. But we all have to give a little bit. And every family in Alaska has given a portion of the standard calculation for the dividend for the last 3 years. Every man, woman, and child. That's how big the problem is. And we're all going to come together. We're going to get this economic corner turned. We're going to have a restructured permanent fund, and we'll have the debate, Mr. President, if we're going to split whatever payout we're going to have, 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, whatever it is, we'll get it done, and we'll start marching down the course to a lot brighter economic future, because Alaska is very, very rich. We have more oil value sitting in the Arctic today than we had 30 years ago. We're on the crust of getting a gas line that we've been waiting for 40 years. We've spent billions in deferred maintenance the last several years, although the last few have been really light. But we've caught up a lot on our deferred maintenance and our highways. We are a very rich and wealthy state. And so that, Mr. President, I support this budget. I support my two colleagues that spent many grueling hours putting budgets together at the finance table and the balance. Over the next couple of years, hopefully we can do more things for more people. But what we will do is we'll protect that permanent fund. We'll make sure we don't adversely overdraw it and hurt it for the future Alaskans. And we're going to try to get them a nice, stabilized, predictable dividend for not only the current Alaskans, but future Alaskans. Mr. President, I support this budget, and I look forward to a bigger Marine Highway budget next year.